starts here.
Welcome to the How Could You podcast. I'm Lauren Tocci.
And I'm Ryan Tocci, and I caught my first tube this morning.
You know, given all the weird things that Gary Busey says in this movie, I'm glad that's the quote you went with.
Yeah, the more apropos one would have been, speaking of the microphone, Squid Brain.
Which would have been a really mean way to start the podcast.
Yeah, then we'll start it on a negative.
Well, welcome to episode 3, everyone.
Hey, Lauren, we went international.
That's right. We have people listening in Germany, which makes us feel very fancy.
I'm very excited about that.
We also have controversy this week.
You know, I did say last week, more than likely my family was going to call me out and say that I had seen Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And they did in record time.
3 hours. 3 hours after it dropped.
Yes.
I'm getting a text from my sister Erica saying, "You definitely saw Indiana Jones. Sorry."
And then your sister Jolene confirmed and added to the story, you saw it on Laserdisc.
Yes. So, all right.
Laserdisc, Ryan. Laserdisc.
Speaking of my age now? Or?
A little bit.
All right, which is true. So the deal is, we used to live in Oklahoma. Go Pokes.
Oh, God.
And but I was about 2-3 years old. So my sisters did say there's probably more of a reason I didn't see it. So maybe the show should start being called the How Could You Not Remember Seeing This Film?
No. We're going to have to really adapt our title and our format.
But yeah, we used to get Laserdiscs. My parents used to rent a Laserdisc machine, rent the Laserdisc, and watch it. And they said they both my sisters, Jolene and Erica, both said they very vividly remember watching it. And I found out, which I didn't know, my dad was actually a huge Indiana Jones fan.
Oh, that's kind of fantastic to find out.
She said he loved his film, so yeah.
How could you not love those films? They're incredible. I didn't even mean to do that with the title. It just happened. But how could you not love all of the Indiana Jones films? Yes. But I just think it's like so remarkable to think about the technology at which you saw it on, because it's the least efficient version of watching a film.
Because they were talking about this, and so when we lived in Oklahoma, I didn't remember. You know, I was little, so I don't remember everything. So I totally believe them that I had seen it and just have no recollection. It just didn't stick there, good or bad or anything. But I do really remember watching Halloween 3 on Laserdisc at about 4 years old in Oklahoma.
31 days till Halloween,
Yes.
Halloween.
Yes, and I remember my dad talking about how Michael Myers was not in that movie, and I remember that so I do remember Laserdisc and us getting them. I just do not have any recollection of Indiana Jones.
It's kind of fantastic.
Or Raiders of the Lost Ark or any of them.
We have an additional point of controversy. Well, maybe not point of controversy, but point of confirmation. I really thought I would have more people on my side agreeing that Bradley Cooper should not play Indiana Jones, but I found the reverse.
I think I won.
You did win. And then I kept coming up with actors as people would like talk to me about it, and they're like, no, actually, Ryan's right. And I was like, it was a tough pill to swallow. But
there were some called out for Chris Pratt, though. That we were both wrong, and Chris Pratt was the right choice.
Yes, and Ryan Reynolds, I think.
There was a Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know what? Fine castings all around. But what I want to see is the all-dog remake with Dr. Henry Jones Jr., the dog, playing Indiana Jones, because the cutest little floof, whose name is Dr. Henry Jones Jr., is my brother and sister-in-law's dog. So cute. Yes. And he should play Indiana Jones.
I'm all for that.
Yes.
I'm all for that.
So now we have settled the debate in this household.
Is it going to be like a Benji style, or are we going to do it like, now where the animals get voices, like a Jon Favreau version of it?
No. Silent film. You'll see it in his eyes.
So, but there is no controversy this week on whether we saw this movie. We confirmed, at least with family. We know I've seen it, and we knew that you had not seen it previously. So, I mean, I guess, to be fair, you had seen it a couple years ago.
About 2 years ago.
But when we do this, it's within,
a range of time.
All right, it's our show. It's just, we're making it up as we go. But yeah, last day of summer. This is coming out on last day of summer, so there was no way to go with any other movie then.
Point Break.
Yes.
Yes, we were saying bye to... we decorated our apartment for Halloween on Labor Day. I'm drinking pumpkin spice coffee out of a Hocus Pocus mug.
I got my Hawaiian shirt on.
Have a Hawaiian
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, but you're drinking out of a pumpkin mug too, so this family has said goodbye to summer a while ago.
Last day of summer. Here we go.
And Point Break, what a better way to end it? Like, what a love letter to surfing culture and Southern California and beautiful shots of the ocean. it gives you all the summer vibes.
I saw that another title for this would have been Riders on the Storm, and I thought that would have been a great title.
Yeah, I immediately want to, like, I'm not going to sing the song on the podcast, but,
right.
like, immediately I hear that song, and I'm thinking about the opening sequence of the film.
Yes.
And Riders on the Storm is such a great way to
Allegedly,
open up the film.
I guess they didn't go with it because they said the lyrics didn't really coincide with anything, but
well, no, the lyrics don't have
but I
anything
agree
to do
with
with
you.
certain
That
thing.
opening, you stole that same opening with Riders on the Storm playing. Oh, that would have brought you right in.
Yeah. So,
not that it doesn't already, but we'll get there.
Anyone out there with some editing talent, please re-edit the opening of Point Break for us with that in the background.
The question, Lauren Tocci, how could you not have seen Point Break?
Okay, and so I have to start by saying I love this film deeply, and just like with The Goonies, which was my first gap that we were filling for this podcast, like, I immediately loved it. I mean, I remember the credits rolling and me turning to you and saying, I love that so much, unironically, because it's an action film. Like, there can be that, you love it, but you kind of know it's a little bit trash. But this, I was like, no, I would defend to the hilt that this is a great film, and this is probably one, and I'm going to say it, it is probably one of the best action films ever made. I said what I said, and I will stand by that. But I was thinking about this because I'm like, I should have seen this movie at some point. One of my favorite movies in high school, and a friend of mine in high school used to watch this, I would say 2 to 3 times a week, was Top Gun. I would watch Top Gun on repeat. Mm-hmm. And
this would be a great double feature with this and Top Gun. Yeah.
And it feels like there's, like, so much, like, like, ties and very similar, like, themes and the way the action scenes are expressed and, the way in some of the relationships are expressed, that I feel like this should have been a natural film for me to see, but for whatever reason, I didn't. Yeah. And the second I saw it, I was just like, I want to rewatch this. This is great. I want to talk to everyone about this. But it's, like, really weird, water cooler talk to be like, hey, that film Point Break, like, has everyone seen it at this point?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say, though, is unlike our first 2 films we did, this isn't a classic to me. This is a cult classic.
I think it should be considered a classic. Mm-hmm. We're going to fight. I can feel it.
No. I love this movie. I do, but it is not the same. I didn't get there the same way that I did, say, with Goonies when we talked about that.
And that's fair. I don't know.
But would you agree this is more of a cult classic than a classic, right?
Yes.
Can we at least go with that?
Yes. And listen, and you and I have had conversations before, like, the term cult classic can get really, really particular of what that is. And especially when you have something that becomes a cult classic and actually start going into that realm of, like, classic cinema because it becomes that. And again, I would make several arguments that maybe this should be considered that as well. But yes, it's much more cult classic. I don't think it's like the Goonies or Raiders of the Lost Ark where people are going to get objectively mad that we hadn't seen it, you know, but I do think it's something that's, like, very much worth talking about, which is why we're going to spend some time today talking about how great this film is. Yeah. And I will say,
I'm going to talk about how much I love this film.
What does that mean?
I've yet to decide whether I think this is a great film or not.
My cheeks are red right now. Like, I'm sorry. We have to explain. We don't talk about what we're going to discuss with the podcast. Like, we really just we take our notes very much on our own. And unlike what we used to do after watching a movie and, like, talk about it for, like, 3 hours after, we're like, no, we're not going to talk about it. We'll save it for the podcast. That way it feels fresh and natural. And I thought you were walking into this ready to go, this is a great film. And apparently you're not.
This is one of those movies that I'm going to say I love and everybody should see because it is so much fun. However, it's not a movie that I loved the first time I saw it.
Really?
Yeah. Now, but let me explain. No, I'm going to say, so this came out, this is a 1991 film. Okay, so I would have been about 11 years old, so everybody can do the math. And now this is one I got introduced again by my sisters. So they're a little older than me. They would have been in high school at that time, and they loved it. I know, and we're Anthony Kiedis, my sister Jolene, huge Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I remember so vividly how much, she loved that Anthony Kiedis was in this movie.
It is very cool that he's in
yes,
this.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's very cool. So, I remember them really enjoying it, and so I watched it at that time. I didn't dislike it, but it definitely didn't connect with me.
So you didn't get why they were so enamored by the film?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one of those like, oh, okay. but that was a kind of it, but it always just floated out there in the, in this film archive. But over time, the more I saw it, the more I began to appreciate it.
And how great of a film it is.
This movie should not work.
This movie
should not work at all.
No.
It
really plays with Law and Order.
I'm going to say right off the bat, and this movie should not work, and a reason it does, the reason we can still sit here and talk about it today, the reason why you who had not seen it had to see it as a film fan, is because of Catherine Bigelow.
Oh, all right. So here comes my emotional ramblings about Catherine Bigelow and everything she means to the
Catherine
film
Bigelow,
industry.
the director.
Yes. So the director of Point Break. Really significant, and probably if you hadn't heard of the name as associated particularly with Point Break, Catherine Bigelow won Best Director at I think that was the 82nd annual Oscar. She was
2008.
The film came out in 2008. It didn't go wide until 2009. So we're talking about the film The Hurt Locker. So it ran the festival circuit in 2008, wide release in 2009. She won Best Director, and she was the first female director to ever win. Only one of 5 ever to be nominated, and it took till the 82nd Academy Awards before a female director ever won that titling, and no one has won since.
Yeah, I mean...
And there's only been one nominated since, which is Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird. So her impact in cinematic history because of that film and because of her work in the industry is obviously incredibly important. And when I watch Point Break, I think the first... And listen, I'm certainly sure we're going to talk about, because obviously this cast is phenomenal. But this film, exactly what you're talking about, this whole it shouldn't work... It works because of her directing. Yeah. Because she makes very particular
and which
choices.
we'll talk about the cast.
Yes, of course.
It's the right casting. Whether or not it's great acting is a different conversation here, but for right now, it's great casting.
I feel very warm and fuzzy about this movie, and I don't think I'm going to be able to kill my darlings on this. And listen, we're going to talk about, I'm sure, Keanu's performance is really what we need to discuss. I know I'm going to get crushed about this, and it's not that I'm saying that I don't love... Again, this movie's great, and you're right. Catherine Bigelow's DNA is all over this in how good it is. I mean, and that's note upon note about everything that she does and how she's shooting this film. Well, I even think about, my first, kind of... thing that I notice about what she does with the camera is, you're so within the spaces, and I think that's why it's easy to attach to this film, is because she makes you feel within. When she does the chase sequence, now granted this is towards the end of the film, but the chase sequence, they did it on a handheld 35mm camera, and I loved the decision to have you in front, so for example, so it's in front of Ronald Reagan / Bodhi. It's in front of him. Spoilers abound. It's in front of him. It moves over his shoulder, and then you follow his back, and then it pans, and now you're with Johnny Utah, and it's at his face. It pans over his shoulder. It goes to his back. You feel as though you were a bystander within that, or even the scene. Oh my gosh! And I love this scene so much with Johnny and Pappas talking about, trying to figure out why they think they're surfers and talking about the dirt samples. And if you notice, the camera never stops moving in that scene. It's an office scene. It shouldn't feel as dynamic as it does. They're talking about soil samples and, sex wax, and it shouldn't feel exciting because it's really expository. But she keeps panning the camera back and forth, so no matter what I'm doing, I feel like I'm kind of walking and pacing in this office setting. And then the first time it, kind of goes still is when they, Johnny jumps up on the desk and Pappas. So Pappas jumps up on the desk and they're doing kind of the goofy hang 10, dude. And that's the first time we get kind of a still in that whole sequence.
Her framing, and I was thinking about that scene a lot too. I agree completely with you. That scene, and I think the first time that he meets Tyler, not the first time he meets her, but the time he comes to the restaurant, and the way that she frames those shots, she knows when to pull in, when to pull out. Again, talking about the, and you're just, as the scene's going and those two are connecting, even falsely, I guess, which we know as the audience, but even you can see the connecting, and that's how they're pulling in more and more with Tyler and with him, which I think was brilliantly done. The scene you're talking about, I agree with you, the going back and forth and then knowing when to pull out on that scene. just amazing, and I love it. And it's just fun, right? Like it's you want to be in that office with those two guys because it's...
Yes, and now granted, like the performances are obviously, so engaging that of course, like they're, you could rest on that. You could just say the performances are engaging enough that my audience is going to feel connected enough to these characters, but she doesn't. She says like there has to be a way to make you feel apart. Again, it's that whole like being within, because, you think about the 90s and how much like Southern California culture pervades American culture, like throughout that decade. I mean, even still, right. Southern California culture becomes like such like a touchstone point of like understanding American culture. But she really like wants you to give you the opportunity that if you, doesn't matter where you live, you can kind of understand and feel like, oh, I kind of got to be part of that for a moment. And I think that's what makes it so engaging. You even think about the first time, the first time you see Bodhi surfing, he looks like a god. Yeah. He looks like a god of surfing. It's so beautifully shot.
Oh, yeah. She uses, I have a note here that says location, 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 because she uses every location as another character. And that makes this film as well, because just, you're talking about from the opening shot of the water in the background of the opening credits to everything that she does. And it's not like it's all just these beautiful, shots. You're talking about even the office shots, like just the way that the camera's moving with it, the way that it's put in there. You're working with it, and she makes California look both grimy and beautiful perfectly.
Yes, and I think that's the thing. Like, she does not glamorize these spaces. No. These spaces are captured as they are, but there's something, again, it's that camera work that you go, I still want to be there. It's gross, but yes. Take me to that place. Like, when the two guys are, like, they have, like, the blanket over their head, and they're smoking up on, like, the beach, and then, like, you see there's, like, factory behind, and you're like, any other place, any other time, I'd be like, ew, but, oh, no, she makes it look so enticing. And I think, particularly...
The ocean scenes.
Oh, the ocean scenes. And one of the great things she does is the way she plays with lighting. You really have this sense that the sun never sets on this story until the end. The only time things really truly look gray is in your end sequence. Yeah. And probably a function of two, of like, one, it's supposed to be, the half-year storm or the 50-year storm. 50-year storm. Mm-hmm. And then, like, additionally, like, so that was actually, so that scene was shot in Oregon. Actually, it was shot at the ending where the Goonies ends.
Really?
That's the same location.
Nice. I did not know that.
So if you're
That's
watching
cool.
that end sequence and you're like...
So it wasn't Australia?
It was not Australia. In fact, there's actually a lot of the surfing sequences were done at the beach where the Goonies ends.
Oh, that's terrific. That's cool.
I think Ecola State Park, I think is the name of it. So it's just, but I love the intentionality of when she's shooting even like the night surfing sequences or any night sequences, that she plays with lighting in a way where it feels very endless summer. Like it feels like...
yeah, definitely.
The sun will kind of never set on like Bodhi and like his adventures, and like, as Johnny becomes like even more, ingrained within this world, like there's just a sense of like this has to keep going because there's so much fun in what they're doing.
So this is where I think, we both are going to agree this movie's strengths lay on the directing. The script is wildly weird.
What do you mean? 2 meatball subs. 2.
We can sit here and quote this movie for days. For days. I saw at one point, instead of doing a recast, just going over our top favorite quotes of this film, because you're right, they are just one line. But again, this is in the hands of Catherine Bigelow, who turns this script around, because the screenplay was done by W. Peter Liff, who the only other notable credit I could find was for Varsity Blues. Oof. So you're already like... Can
I tell you, you've now explained everything that I had questions about. Listen, in terms of the screenplay.
All I'm going to say,
all has been explained.
After we're done with this, and anybody listening, look up this guy's IMDb picture. If you don't look at him and go, oh yeah, that guy wrote Varsity Blues and Point Break, I don't know. It is fantastic. But so I'm looking at that and seeing that you can see again, both how those both coincide. Very different films in their own right, but on the same token, the writing is so similar.
Yeah, and I don't think necessarily, I couldn't put exactly my finger on until you kind of give me another thing that this person wrote, like how to identify, because you're right, the screenplay is not the strength. Now, Catherine Bigelow and James Cameron both had hands on the final cut of the screenplay.
I saw, he's a producer, right?
Yeah, which I think perhaps...
Were they married at this time? Because they were married,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, they were married at this point, and I think that perhaps maybe speaks to why we go for something that... Not to, hate on anyone who likes Varsity Blues who's listening, but like that you go from something like that to something that feels like it's got a lot more heart and a little bit more intentionality. Like, I have a feeling that's probably where Catherine Bigelow and James Cameron come into play.
Jonathan Moxon?
The Mox.
The Mox. That's a great film. Great film if you were a teenage boy in the 90s.
Yeah. I do not want our podcast ever to stand on any type of ground where we're actually saying Varsity Blues is a great film. Point Break is a great film.
It's funny, we're talking a lot about Catherine Bigelow. I was kind of looking over her film credits again, as anybody, if she's a big name, obviously. She doesn't have a huge bio with her films that are real notable. I mean, we got Strange Days, Blue Steel, a little more deep cuts.
Yeah, and then we have
Weight of Water, Hurt Locker,
Zero Dark 30.
Zero Dark 30, which is a great movie, but did not hold up now with things that we know. So that's a tough one on her because it's not a film that's going to stand, a test of time because it's already been so kind of pulled apart.
Yeah, it's something that's definitely like fact checking and kind of like changing an understanding of narratives and how things occurred certainly changes, I think, the perception of that film. And I think there is certainly a discussion to have here about, the lack of equity in Hollywood for female directed films. Hopefully we're starting to see a turn in that, as we have some, particularly like directors like Ava DuVernay, Greta Gerwig, Sofia Coppola, director, but I wonder if it's partially that. I also wonder, different kind of turns in careers. I mean, she is an, Academy Award winning director.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not taking anything away from her.
Oh, certainly not. No.
Because like I said, even Zero Dark 30 is a great, if you had seen it at the time it came out.
It was great at the time.
Really great. Yeah, it's just has other issues with it now. But then we kind of jump into the cast a little bit here. And it's funny, we're talking a lot heavily about a female director here, and it's a very male-driven film.
But I think what she does is she reframes the way in which we can approach action films. And this is perhaps why I attach onto it so much as an action film, because I think it does a fair amount of work having fun with action film tropes and buddy comedy, or not buddy comedies, but like buddy action films. And then also has these interesting points of subversion where it gets like very heady and theoretical and very spiritual. So I think it's definitely something that like deepens a lot of those ideas. And not to say that all action films aren't deep, because there certainly are like many prominent examples. But I think this particularly in its time was doing something very different than its predecessors and its contemporaries.
So going over the cast here.
Yes. Ooh, so fun.
John C. McGinley, which is definitely that actor, which is, who plays Harp, who plays the head, is definitely that guy.
Yes, that guy from Scrubs.
Yes, I mean, that's going to be his most notable role, which is Dr. Cox on Scrubs. But, I mean, he's in so many films and pops up so much. He looks the same age as he always has.
Yeah, completely.
I mean, he's always going to have a place in my heart because he's in Seven. He plays SWAT Team California, which you don't really notice it's him. Like, most people I don't think realize it's him in that.
My jaw literally dropped. That
is
him.
Yes.
That is him.
Yeah, because he plays such a badass character in that movie, even though he's such a bit part.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
When he's yelling for them when they find Sloth and everything. But he's great, so he plays Harp perfectly,
yes.
And then you got Lori Petty.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can't.
Question right off the bat.
Yeah.
Is this peak Lori Petty?
This is peak Lori Petty. So I wouldn't have known this is peak Lori Petty because I would have assumed that peak Lori Petty is Kit in A League of Their Own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But now I would say I attach a lot more to, I mean, she's Tank Girl always and forever.
She kind of had these, like, I mean, she's got a lot of credits, but, like, she's got to be most notable. And all these films came out right on top of each other.
Well, yeah, because she was...
Free Willy.
Yes.
League of Their Own, Point Break, and then
Tank
a couple
Girl.
of years Tank Girl. Yeah. She's always going to be Tank Girl, even though I think, obviously...
Point Break's her better role.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yes.
Yeah, Lori Petty's great in this.
Also, I was thinking... her during that time period if DC had done a movie with Harley Quinn. I mean, but she would have been a great Harley Quinn.
Well, and think about...
I don't think Harley Quinn had actually been written yet, but...
94
yeah,
is the first appearance
I could be.
I'm
gonna butcher that, so I'm not gonna. But at some point she would have played a great. But anyway.
She would have made a great Harley Quinn. That is for sure.
And then we get to Gary Busey playing Pappas. All right, Gary Busey. How this man has a... I'm going to sound like I'm going to... Gary Busey, though, I'm going to give him credit for Silver Bullet. He plays Uncle Red, and he's fantastic in it. He played Buddy Holly.
His most notable role, Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. Chet Stedman. Yes. But he's your buddy. Right?
Oh, yeah, Gary Busey and I, we have a special relationship.
Oh, yes.
It's your fault.
You and your friend Gary Busey. All right, so one thing people know about us, we like conventions.
Yes,
we go to conventions,
yes.
And we've had the opportunity to meet, celebrities over the years and do, photo ops and meet and greets. We went with our two friends, Holly and Joe, to our favorite Monster Mania in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Shout out to them. And had the weirdest meet and greet ever.
Actually, no. Given that it's Gary, if it was any other celebrity, I would say it is the weirdest. But given that it was Gary Busey, it was like right on brand.
Talk about somebody that lived up to exactly. If you think you know what you're going to meet with Gary Busey, that's what you're getting.
He delivered. So his son Jake Busey was there, and he just kept yelling across the table, Jake! And then you get the harebrained idea that I needed to meet Gary Busey and get a picture with Gary Busey.
I thought it'd be a nice moment.
And it was nice. It was exactly what you would expect. He was 100% what you would expect.
He wasn't weird at all.
He wasn't weird at all. And he didn't tickle me at all. I'm not saying tickle emotionally, physical tickles.
Yeah, that was strange.
Great.
I think only followed by Tom Sizemore, who happens to be in this film for a very brief moment, which we never actually met, but we were at a convention with him, which was still another one of our weirdest stories. And all I can say is the moment ended with Tom Sizemore being tripped and almost fighting a fan and having to be calmed down by
LeVar Burton of Reading Rainbow.
So you haven't lived until you're standing in a line for 5 hours to meet Linda Blair and you see Tom Sizemore being rubbed on the back by LeVar Burton.
It was like, take a look, it's in a book.
So Busey's in this, and it's prime Busey. I mean, he's great in this
Hilarious
movie.
And perfect.
And then we get to the stars. Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves.
You couldn't ask for a better duo, especially in the 90s. I mean, anytime, but especially in the 90s, like you just think about those two actors and the filmography here for both. Insane.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, these are iconic actors. Everybody knows them. I mean, we don't even need to go through their bio, but I will ask you right off the bat, though. Keanu Reeves, all-time actor. Give me a top 5.
So like top 5 favorite performances?
Top 5 favorite performance. You don't need to say top 5 best, but top 5 favorite.
Okay, so with this, do I have to go in order, or can I go out of order?
Whatever.
Okay, so top 5 in no particular order. So, I mean, obviously, I think Point Break is probably in my... Yeah, Point Break is on my list. Point Break, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Speed, which is probably my favorite Keanu Reeves performance. Yes. This next one I will defend to the hilt. Sweet November. I love him in that movie. I know it is super depressing,
but I... Charlize Theron one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's super depressing, and I love him in that. And then... Devil's Advocate. His southern accent is the worst, and I don't care. And I know the movie is probably abhorrent upon a rewatch, but I don't care. I loved Keanu Reeves in Devil's Advocate.
Oh, okay.
I think the podcast just imploded. I think I broke Ryan.
No, it's fine. It's cool. I mean, I would have put in Constantine myself, actually. But
that's a great
But no,
pick.
The Devil's Advocate is so... But the Devil's Advocate is a perfect Keanu Reeves movie in that it is just a good, fun watch.
Well, and I should hate it. It's kind of terrible, but I also kind of love it at the same time. I
was looking at this thing with him and, his bio, and I'm like laughing because right now everybody's talking about the Keanu-sance of him kind of having this resurgence. And I'm like, the guy's never left. Like, he's had really notable roles for years, and every decade since he's been around, I'm not really sure.
And I think it's not necessarily that he reinvents himself. I think he just gets rediscovered constantly. Like, he'll hit a role and you'll be like, oh, that's right. And like, everyone jokes around right now that we're in the Keanu sans because of the John Wick films. And I think that's his most recent entry, but there's just something about him. He's just very easy to watch. And you can't classify it as like, oh, he's like that typical like Hollywood movie star and that's what makes him enjoyable. He's his whole own thing. Yeah,
and I mean, and the three I want to just mention that I like are, all of those that you said, of course. Shane Falco, The Replacements.
Oh, I'm a little mad I didn't say
Props to that one. But two of the things I'll say, we just talked about this with somebody, Always Be My Maybe on Netflix currently. I'm not even saying if you're not a romantic comedy, it may not be the film for you, but there is really about a 20-minute period of him in that movie, and he is just fantastic. I would watch just that 20 minutes because he is so just golden. Hilarious. And then I also love him in Parenthood. He's so good in Parenthood. I mean, he's got a very bit role in that, but he is so good. Again, another movie that I just came to love because of my sisters.
And that's a great one. I like that we're both avoiding any times in which he used a super offensively bad British accent, like Much Ado About Nothing and Dracula.
Stayed away from Dracula completely.
We just went, Dracula, you stay way over there.
Parenthood, when he gets his hair cut, my sister Jolene did that to me in like the early 90s, where she cut my hair like he did in that movie. I was so pumped. I loved it.
Fantastic.
And then Patrick Swayze, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, he's an iconic actor, sadly passed away back in 2009 at 57.
Oh my gosh, has it been that long already?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So my question to you is not because Patrick Swayze is so iconic, but was he a good actor?
Yes.
Okay,
so here, and I understand, because if you think about his roles, there's quite there's a wide range of things he does, but there is like a kind of a Patrick Swayze, like kind of components of his performances you expect a little bit, but I think it's like when you start thinking of the breadth of the work. If you take something like Roadhouse and Point Break and Dirty Dancing and Ghost and watch them back to back to back, I think you'll see things that you kind of mark as a Patrick Swayze performance, but then I think you'll see the way in which he adapts those characters, but moreover, how he gives each of those characters heart in a way that makes you have very visceral emotions about like when he's upset. Like, the character of Bodhi, he is a criminal. And you know that, listen, even the first time I watched, I was like, well, they're obviously the surf group you're looking for. And I knew really not a lot about the film, but I would say the thing he does best is you just want to love him, and he is something, like, he is mesmerizing to watch. And my first, like, introduction to Patrick Swayze was, of course, Dirty Dancing, which I think I saw, like, the first time I saw it, I was, like, 5 years old. So I grew up with him very much as that. And then when I saw Ghost, that opened up this different layer because, like, he had, there's a different type of heart that he has within that character. And then, like, something like this, like, my notes just on Bodhi, I'm like, I would follow him to the ends of the earth.
I did say he's kind of a cult leader and that we would follow.
I would join that cult. Because all the hair is so great. Yeah. But then, like, on top of it, it's just everything he does in this film. I love that he did all of his own skydiving. I love that because that I had to look that up. So that scene's
shot so good, and I'm like, how the heck did they film these? You're looking at Keanu Reeves, and you look at it and you go, yeah, I know that that's not him actually out there, but with Patrick Swayze, I'm going, those shots look real, way too realistic. And then, yeah, he did his own stunts for that and did his own skydiving, which is awesome. He sounds like he was such a cool guy.
Well, exactly. And
nice, yes. Everything. It's such a sad thing that, we lost him.
But, and also all these performances we still get to have with him and how vibrant those performances are. So yes, I would say he's an incredible actor. And I think, you're just even thinking about that skydiving, like it looks like he's doing a ballet in air. And I think that's just, even just the moment of when, they're having that great football game on the beach.
Yes.
Which is actually, did you know that's the beach from Karate Kid where they play the soccer?
I did see that, yes.
I thought that was a really cool note,
too. Yeah, that's a cool thing.
So, and Johnny tackles him, and you assume the reaction is going to be really like masculine and aggressive. And the guys even like, kind of his crew comes over and they seem very aggravated. They're not like really ready to tear his head off, but they're definitely like, hey, what did you just do? But just the way he delivers that line of like, don't you know who this is? Yeah. It is the essence of cool. He is the essence of cool.
You're right. And again, kind of going back into the film here, it's a credit to the likability of the cast of why this works. Again, I'm going to say, which is where I think, I'm going to get lambasted here, is it shouldn't work. None of this movie should work. It's grotesque. It's over-the-top dialogue. It's even over-the-top acting at times, but there's such a likability to all these characters and the way that it's shot that it's just really works. The over-the-top part I'm talking about is specifically in that scene with Pappas and Utah when they're at the crime scene the first time and they start screaming at each other and Utah's like, you mad?
You mad? Get mad. Doesn't it feel good to be alive?
Yeah. It's so over the top, but you're like, yes.
Yes, I buy 100% into this.
And, you talking about I was laughing about the coincidences that have to work out for this all to play out. Johnny gets on the surfboard, and luckily he meets Tyler right off the bat, who happens to be connected with the ex-presidents. You have... Good thing Bodie was a football fan, because that's what connects him to surfer dudes that, just like to go out and play some football in their leather and jeans. And
good thing his, major injury happened during a game against USC.
Right. Yes.
Another coincidence.
Also, do you send out an FBI agent undercover that's so notable and that people would recognize? And he uses his real name, his real location. I don't know.
But this is, all right, so we're thinking about this in a 2020 mind frame, not in a 1991 mind frame, there's no social media. There's no, he's not so... All right, fine, you're saying he was an Ohio State quarterback.
He was supposed to be... you get the feeling that he was supposed to be
go pro.
A pro type, prospect. It wasn't like, some random guy on the third guy on the bench that played at, some mediocre school.
You're right. It's not the most clandestine, mission to send someone who does have some name recognition
also,
out
Bodie
to the
showing up to save him at that fight right at the right moment that connects him and invite him to the party.
Great. But, you said something. You said this is, a brotastic film, right? Mm-hmm. And this is why it shouldn't work, or this is maybe why I should find it, objectionable. But I think actually what I love about it is because it's such it's so really sensitive male relationships and a real sense of these people deeply care about each other, and they're kind of the manifestation of their male energy has nothing to do with suppressing anyone else. And there's and you do have that one group that the raid happens because they think it might be them that are the ex-presidents, and you see this grotesque super toxic masculinity, and then that's so contrasted against what the ex-presidents are doing, because they're not trying to be overtly violent, and everything until their last heist, the way in which their heists are filmed, it feels lighthearted. It's always focusing on them. They're not really doing close-up shots of the people who are being clearly traumatized by what's happening until that last heist. And then Catherine Bigelow so smartly gives us all of the reactions of the people who are in the bank. So now we can feel kind of the turn of we're not supposed to be okay with what they're doing.
Yeah, and and I kind of had a listing here of all of our scenes and everything and going through them. And that botched bank robbery scene, since you just were there with that, I wanted to talk about because it's so painful to watch. That is one of the tougher scenes to watch in the entire film, because it's like you said, everybody's so likable, you're connected with all these characters. It's an interesting film in that your villains are actually characters that you're not really sure if you're rooting for them or not. And that bank robbery scene, it's so intense. You feel for everybody. It doesn't matter, the police officer, that poor security guard who's just scared beyond belief, Utah, who is just in this no-win situation, and then even, the ex-presidents, and I apologize, his name's escaping me right now, when the younger surfer is shot.
Oh, Gromit, who's supposed to be, he's actually Bodie's younger brother.
I did not realize that.
There was a line that was said, and I was like, oh, I think they're related.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Ramesses'
Interesting.
brother.
That I never picked up on all the time, but I've seen it. But, that you still feel the weight of all of that. So that's a really well done scene with that. And I even kind of jumping back to a little bit, you were talking earlier about the chase scene. And what I liked about that chase scene too was that it felt like Ferris Bueller on speed a little bit. Like it was just
Oh God.
But no, it's just like it's you feel every emotion in that scene. Like you feel like you're with them. The way it's shot. Although who throws a dog at somebody?
That's like a vicious move.
He just throws
a dog. Who throws a dog, man?
Johnny Utah punts the dog away. I don't think John Wick would have liked that.
No, John Wick would have not liked that at all.
I'm watching that scene. He just throws a dog. He just stops and says, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw this dog."
And I like as you're pointing out, like you feel every emotion, and you also don't know who you're rooting for.
Well,
you really don't.
Yeah, right. Like, exactly. It's humorous. It's thrilling. It kind of plays on all of those.
It's very upsetting.
And then you end with that iconic, shot of him shooting the gun in the air.
Yes, unleashing his clip into the air because he was so disturbed by the fact that he's like, I know I can't shoot this guy. And then you have that great shot at the close up of Bodhi's eyes, those sensitive, soulful, ocean-filled eyes that you're just like, well, who could shoot him? I understand he's doing bad things, but still, let him go. And I realize that's maybe my moral or immoral.
I love that scene because that's done so well in Hot Fuzz of playing off of that.
Oh yes, it's such a great reference.
Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz for those has a lot of references to Point Break in that, which is fantastic.
Great references. So, you're talking about those scenes. There's so many sequences in this. So obviously, I'm trying to make the argument that this is a great film. So I'll ask you, what are your favorite scenes? Because this wasn't a gap for you. You had seen it. You didn't have a favorable feeling the first time, but have grown to love this film. So what are some of your favorite scenes that you can kind of point to?
I have a couple, and it's funny because one of the scenes I wanted to talk about was the point of view at the party. It's not going to be one of my favorite scenes, but this is a scene that I appreciated watching the other night because it really brings you into that world. Because that scene can be kind of cheesy in a way because of how everybody's kind of moving and they're playing off the camera. But I think because you realize you're viewing it from the eyes of Utah, that you're looking at he's coming into this party without knowing this world. It is going to feel off. It's going to feel a little wild and crazy, and he's trying to adapt to it right off the bat. So I think that's done really well and sucks you right into that party and then therefore into that world of the ex-presidents or all of that surfing culture there.
And you have that great Hendrix song playing in the background, If Six Were Nine, and you realize that song works so well in that scene because you realize that Bodhi and Johnny are inverses of each other.
Yes.
So If Six Were Nine, it just works so nicely.
So good, so good. Favorite scenes, again, this is kind of like with Raiders of the Lost Ark. I have a different favorite shot and a different favorite scene. And I think my favorite scene is going to be a really outside the box one for you.
I'm curious.
My favorite scene is actually, it's after the first time they learn how to surf, or not, the night surfing scene. And he stays with Tyler. And he stays overnight and he wakes up and it's the morning of the raid, his raid over with the group that ends up being wrong. I love that scene because that to me is the perfect Johnny Utah scene because she mentions it the night before when they're out on the ocean of oh, you don't have that seriousness. And I love that he's late for a raid. He's an FBI agent, his own raid. He's late for it and he can't help but laugh and smile. He is now becoming part of this world. You realize that he actually has true feelings for Tyler, which is going to obviously set that up for later in the film. It is just so well done. I love that scene. It's not one of these iconic scenes. I get it, but to me, it gives you the most about Utah in that moment, and it gives you the most for him later in the setup.
Well, it's because it's the scene that feels the most natural. There's no posturing. He's not trying to be an FBI agent, and he's not trying to act like this guy who's learning how to surf. And he's not having to be the, star quarterback. It's just literally he is just him in that moment. You're right. That's such a perfect scene. And if you were ever going to fall in love with Keanu Reeves in the 90s, I think it's that scene.
And then the favorite shot would have been after it's when they end up crashing into the gas station.
And
he lights, and Bodhi or Reagan at that moment, it's that shot of him with the gas pump on flames and him in the Reagan mask behind. I mean, that's an awesome shot.
It really
I'd
is.
get a poster of that. If I was college right now, I'd get a poster of that to put on my wall. Like,
be honest with yourself. We would put that up now.
But framed, so it's classy.
Framed. It's classy if it's framed. Because we realized that was our transition into adulthood when we stopped using thumbtacks to hang things and started buying frames.
What about you?
So I would say, honestly, I mean, I love your picks, so it's hard, and there's so much in this film. I would say my favorite, I'm going to work a little backwards. I'm going to say my favorite shot of the film, and this is really hard, but my favorite shot is there is a scene when Bodhi and Johnny are out surfing at the same time, and like Tyler's kind of worried that, you know, that Johnny's like not ready essentially for the like the type of surf that he's going to be encountering. And there's a shot with this really powerful wave crashing in the foreground and them in shadow surfing next to each other in the background. And it's so beautifully composed. And again, it plays on this whole idea of like kind of, you know, the midnight sun of it all. There's, you know, sun never kind of sets on this story. And I love that so deeply because it just shows that there was such like an intentionality of like, this has to look beautiful. It has to look enticing, but you also have to understand the like absolute danger of the circumstances that everyone in this film is in. So I love that shot. And then seeing, it's really hard because there are so many, and I think we've already kind of talked about a few of my favorite scenes, but the one that kind of tears like my soul apart a little bit is it's that end sequence with them at the beach, and of, you know, you have Bodhi in probably his most humanistic mode, because he really does have this kind of like otherworldly, godly type presence. Like he seems so serene, so zen the entire film. Even to the point you understand that, like, Bodhi's not his real name. And we don't get that. You know, we know he's Reagan and then he's Bodhi and that's it. But of him just going, you know, I can't be in a cage. And just this, like, this decision of, I'm going to let him go out there and die because that's really the only way this should end. And I just really love the commitment to that. You know, there's no sequel. Like, Bodhi doesn't swim up on the coast of, like, New Zealand and, like, survive. It's really, like, this is how it ends.
That's a baller move, though, by Utah, throwing the mask down and say... Yes.
You know what's even more of a baller move? Going to a place where you know there's going to be a torrential downpour and being dressed in head-to-toe denim. What's that decision? What is your life that you thought that was okay?
Talking about that scene, because I agree, that scene is awesome and totally get what you're talking about there. But it does start to bring up some questions, and I have some questions for you, a little bit rapid fire here.
Ooh, rapid fire. Go for it.
You know, and starting with that scene, and it's going to be a couple of these questions, is, you know, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Is Utah to blame for Pappas's death?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, so, and I don't like thinking of it this way because I don't like putting that on Johnny Utah. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need my heat.
Right,
but yes, because, I mean, he's making choices because I think and I love, this film plays so well with, like, you completely understand, like, why Johnny Utah starts making the decisions that he does because Bodhi's so incredibly likable. But you also realize, like, the destruction that he causes because you can tell he's someone not really committed to any of the worlds that he's in. Except maybe finally at the end the world he lives in with Tyler, but other than that, he's not really committed to any of his worlds. So I would say the answer to your first rapid fire question is yes, it is his fault.
I agree, because yes. So then it kind of then brings up another question. Are Utah and Pappas two of the worst FBI agents ever?
They're two of the best FBI agents. Because Pappas knew, man. He knew. He knew that it was a surfer, and he knew that. And Pappas is amazing. And I know we've talked a little about Gary Busey, but, like, really,
Utah's, like, hanging out with the gang, man. Like, this whole thing.
He's deep cover. He's doing the thing. Pappas is proud of him. But no,
Pappas almost lets him get killed by the other gang, the Anthony Kiedis gang and War Child.
Does, yeah.
And... You know, they both totally missed the bank robbery right in front of them.
But they also have these, like...
For the meatball subs.
Yeah, that part. Give me two. But, like, it is... You're right. But I also love that there's just, like, so much heart in their relationship because you have, like after, like, Johnny Utah's, like, shot someone for the first time, like, there's that great moment where Pappas, like, checks in with him. Like, yeah, it is hard when it's not the paper target or whatever the line is. And I'm like, oh, it's, like, kind of sweet. So, no, they're actually probably bad FBI agents, but I enjoy them. I'd want to hang out with them.
Punches out the boss.
The boss had it coming. He is the living worst.
They don't secure the scene, which ends up getting Pappas killed, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. I just love him so much.
That kind of sways me into my next question for you.
Yeah.
By Utah letting Bodhi go, does he kind of do wrong by Pappas? Did he not have an obligation to, and I get it, the thought is there, he's not coming back. Which is the right thing there? Should he not have brought him in for Pappas?
I don't want you to have to make me think about Johnny Utah in negative terms. And every time you bring up Pappas's death, I get really sad. So I'm going to say, no, Pappas would understand. I don't know if that's really satisfying. I just don't want to think about Johnny Utah in bad terms. Or actually, no, forget it. Johnny Utah's garbage. Pappas and Bodhi are the best. And I only want situations that serve both of them being okay. And they both end up dead.
Was it sadistic to let him go?
Like into the waves?
Like, yeah. Do you think he was being a friend?
Yeah,
Do you think that's a moment of him being a bond with Bodhi, or do you think that's more of a sadistic, like, nah?
Yeah, fine, go kill yourself, whatever.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a deep, like,
how does Johnny Utah also still have a job?
Yeah, that is a concern I had. I was like, what is wrong with the FBI in the 90s that was like, slap on the wrist, you're fine. Like, it's actually worrisome. I have to think you assume, like, that he was doing this personally and getting, like, law enforcement. Kind of like he went rogue. Like, this actually might be the prequel to John Wick that none of us know about.
He has the badge. What's the significance of him throwing it away?
He's done.
So
he is no longer an FBI agent.
Yeah, ain't it wild? Do you think Tyler and Utah are still together?
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, maybe not. No, yes.
Is that the significance of I'm still surfing every day, or?
Yeah, that's probably the significance of that. I think Tyler deserves better because she's such a badass female. She deserves better.
Do you believe Tyler knew that they were the ex-presidents and they were bank robbers?
Yes.
Okay.
I do think she knows.
All right.
I think she knows, but I think because they're nonviolent, and I think that she knows that that's, like, so his ideology of, like, you know, tear down the system, damn the man. Like, I think she knows that that's, like, his jam, and I think because obviously they had, like, a very, like, significant relationship or a very significant connection, and I'm just like, good on you, Tyler. Like, not just Johnny Utah, but also Bodhi. Like, good on you.
And then, yeah. And then I guess my other question here is, is Bodhi a Robin Hood character? Is he altruistic, or is he just a thief?
Okay, so you obviously know that I love Bodhi so much, so I'm not going to say anything negative about him. I think it's until obviously, like, when he does turn violent. And what I love about Patrick Swayze's performance is there is nothing sinister about Bodhi until that happens. And he does this great flip in his performance where you can see it's everything that are the underpinnings of being a criminal start becoming outward. Like, these are obviously things that, like, his ideology has been so about, like, you know, kind of changing the system, like, you know, breaking the chains of, like, you know, capitalism. And then, like, once he kills someone, you now start seeing, like, a lot of, like, darkness kind of, like, peer out. And I think it's really interesting disruption that Patrick Swayze's performance lets us see on the outside. So then everything he says after this feels so malicious. And I think that's a really great move by Catherine Bigelow as a director, and then also Patrick Swayze's performance in doing that. Yeah,
and do you think that Bodhi knew that Utah was an FBI agent before that last heist when Utah
I don't think
comes
he
at
did,
him?
because there's such, like, a way that's played. I don't think you have an understanding that anyone caught wise to what Johnny was. And I think that's what makes that part so hard, is because you also kind of feel for them because they feel so betrayed. And again, I'm not, like, trying to, like, advocate for, like, criminal activity, but at the same time,
I'm really worried that if a Bodhi type character shows up here,
I'd be like, okay, cool, like, let's get dressed up and, like, damn the man, you know, like, no. But it's, you know, Bodhi is, like, really very, very enchanting.
So is this a film you are happy you saw later in life, or wish you had seen it earlier?
I wish I had seen it earlier, insofar as that it would have given me more years with it, but I don't feel like... what I love about it is I feel like it holds up in a way, and even though we've talked about there's so many things that should not work about this film, I do feel like it holds up in a way that, like, you know, it shouldn't have been remade. I'll say that.
One of the worst remakes.
One of the worst remakes.
We are not a remake household. There's the occasional one that works, that we really like, but on the most part, they don't work. But that remake in a couple of years ago, I can't even remember when it was, I don't think you got to see it. I saw
half of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Pieced.
It is it's the bad movie and one of the worst remakes out there. And it's not a movie we're going to try to in a second here, but I don't think
you can't recast it.
I don't think you can recast it. I don't think you can remake it. There's so much
magic that has to happen for all those things that you say shouldn't work to work that like it's hard to recreate that.
Right. It's a great early 90s movie.
And you have to do it with so much intentionality and heart, and it can't just be an action movie, and the newest one just tried to be an action movie. Like, everything's extreme. Like, it just didn't work. So then I'll ask, Ryan Tocci, if you were recasting Point Break today, who would you recast in these roles? Because it feels like an insurmountable task.
I think I got it, though.
All right. Run me through it.
So I was thinking about this, because at one point I was like, well, they just did a remake of it. Should we even do a recast it? But then I thought, it's our show. Yeah, we're going to do a recast.
Go for it. Let's hear it.
So I think I got it here. What I ended up deciding to do, since it was just remade, I actually ended up gender swapping the film. So that's the route I went. So I'm going to hit you just up right with my two top.
Okay.
Bodhi, Zoe Kravitz, Utah, Zendaya.
I would pay an absurd amount of money to see this made. I have no monies, but I would pay an absurd amount of money. Okay, the podcast episode is over. Everything is perfect. Let's end on that note.
No, I think, and we had talked about a little earlier, I didn't know quite the age difference between Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves at the time of making it, so I wasn't really sure of that. And so I'm not sure necessarily the ages differences between Zoe Kravitz
it doesn't matter.
and Zendaya. And I know you just use Zendaya but I don't want to not use somebody just because I think that
and I think Zendaya is like one of those actresses that it becomes like very easy to want to see her in a lot of things. And Zoe Kravitz, and if you've not seen Zoe Kravitz in Big Little Lies, 100% recommend watching that show.
Yeah, the last bunch of things, like she would just nail everything that Bodhi is in that part.
And I would follow her cold style like I would follow Patrick Swayze. Yes. All right, give me the rest of your casting because this is already
and then
great.
The crew, not anybody in specific, but I had as Bodhi's crew, Vanessa Hudgens.
Nice.
Victoria Justice.
Yes.
Shailene Woodward.
Oh, excellent.
And then Maisie Williams.
Oh, I want to hang out with all of those people. All right, the crew's solid. Good job.
So you got your good crew there. Pappas, Taraji P. Henson.
I am so sorry for everyone listening. The noise I just let out was so terrible.
Lauren, only dogs can hear you now.
Oh my god. Yes, Taraji P. Henson is amazing. Right. And they make the best.
Her and Zendaya working off each other would be...
Love it.
So for Tyler... I was going to say this really quick. I would have liked to do Ansel Elgort here, but he's got some things going on, so we're going to put him to the side right now. He doesn't have a movie role yet, but Cole Sprouse.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. I think he could play that cool. And then Harp, I'm just going to do John C. McGinley again.
Wait, he's the same age. Why would you recast him as anyone else?
And then the FBI agents that are like mocking Pappas
the Fratelli brothers,
yeah. Bill Hader and Ben Schwartz.
Oh my god, how do you keep doing this? Do you really have that written down?
I have that written down right there, yeah.
Look, I hope Ben Schwartz
I'm going to show it to our audience right now.
I just hope Ben Schwartz comes up every podcast.
But honestly, yeah, I was very excited about this recasting because I was like, that I would go and see in a second.
Yeah, I don't even want to share mine.
No, I want to hear it. Come on.
Okay, all right, mine is not as good as yours.
Yes,
so I didn't go as deep, but so I'll go reverse order. So Agent Harp, Jason Bateman.
Yes, that would be fun.
I just saw that. So Pappas, Mark Ruffalo.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right, good. I'm glad you're liking this. Tyler, I was really torn, and I went like back and forth, like striving with my soul on this. Tyler, Cara Delevingne.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Well, if you look at her eyes,
I would like to hear then who your Utah is to see how that plays, but yeah, I could definitely see her in that role. She would definitely have that kind of whole vibe that Tyler has.
And then I'll say my Johnny Utah, and I was having a really hard time with this because it's hard to find a Keanu essence, so I decided not to think about a Keanu essence, but to think about like new FBI agent, former like star football player, someone who seems like maybe they could ride that moral line a little bit. I went with Daniel Kaluuya, who was in Get Out and Black Panther.
Oh, yes.
And I see him so as I was like, he could totally do that, because you would see him being charming and kind of cocky, but also like really like morally torn of, you know, am I kind of finding my footing with this like criminal organization that I'm supposed to like break up?
I'm seeing him more a little bit, though. The film becomes a little more grounded. Do you think so?
Yes, because I think in that particular role, I think he would act it better than perhaps Keanu does. And I also think like I think you'd buy it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like I think
I think he'd be great. Yeah.
And then my Bodhi is Chris Hemsworth.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Definitely. Absolutely. Who wouldn't follow him?
All right. Because we've been talking convention talk. So I met Chris Hemsworth at a comic book convention, and everything you think is
quite the opposite. The movie. You came out with tears in your eyes.
I couldn't breathe. I literally could not breathe.
I stood to the side to make myself feel better. I did not go into that picture because that was. It wasn't even just Hemsworth though. It was
Hemsworth and Hiddleston.
You were just in the middle in all your glory, smile ear to ear.
It was 15 seconds of heaven. It was everything. It was like the first time I heard the Beatles.
He would be great with that.
Yeah.
Really good with that. You know, and I'm thinking with him too, kind of him and Rush. Like that vibe that he has in that film, it really correlates to then Bodhi to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good
I like
casting.
both of our recastings. I don't feel the need to fight you this week.
If any of you have anybody out there that, you know, needs or has connections to Hollywood.
Yes, please, because we want to see Ryan's version of this film made stat.
So in summation, Point Break is a film you love unironically.
It's a great film.
And fantastic, and happy to not have as part of your gap in film knowledge.
Yes, completely.
I think it is a fantastic movie everybody should see, but flawed.
And you are wrong. There are no flaws.
And we're both in agreement. It should never be remade again. There should never have been a sequel and should never be a sequel. But if there is, maybe give us a call.
Yeah, we think we've got the dream cast for you.
And then next week, we're going to pick up with a new genre that we haven't hit up yet, horror.
And it's going to be one of Ryan's gaps. And if you know his love and propensity for horror films, then you will be shocked to know he has quite the gap in his horror film knowledge.
It should be fun.
Yes. So if you want to follow us on social media, we are at How Could You Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, at How Could You Pod on Twitter. And if you have any questions or suggestions for an upcoming episode, you can email us at howcouldyoupodcast@gmail.com.
Until next time, enjoy the Odyssey.